All right, we are now live and participants will be joining here for all the attendees that are rolling in. Thank you for joining us. I see Augusto Neves, Vikash Chandri, Femina, my girl, great to see you. Margarita, Marta, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We had over 220 people sign up today, so hoping to see as many of those people as possible in the live event. Still got another minute here before we're going to get going and let people roll in. But I just was talking in the pre-chat. Within the panelists you see here, we have 5 different time zones represented. The Pacific time zone, West Coast, Central time zone, Chicago, East Coast, Tarran in the Bahamas. You have Ivana in Portugal, and then Aparna in Chaturika in the, what is it Indian Standard Time, IST, so 9:30 p.m. for you. So we got what 7 in the morning at one side to oh no 8 in the morning on one side to 9:30 p.m. Um, so again, it's still just 10 o'clock. So I'm going to give another second or two to join. But Elisa Susna, Anna Silva, Bob McCormick, I see you there. You're an Eternal Water guy. Carol Martinson, great to have you. Deborah Estima, awesome. Emily, you know what's up. Appreciate it. Fernando, so we'll give it another 30 seconds here or so, but I'll kind of just get it started here at the beginning. But thank you all for taking the time of your day to join us here. My name's Kevin Sofin, and I'm one of the co-founders of SDG Talks. This started as a podcast offshoot from the Unleash Innovation events last year, where Unleash united all different innovators from around the world to address the sustainable development goal challenges. We wanted to keep the momentum going, so we launched a weekly podcast where we cover all 17 SDGs, from clean water sanitation to gender inequality to education, all those different issues. And in addition to that, we wanted to now host a monthly webinar around different specific SDG topics. In last month was our inaugural SDG roundtable. My co-host James Armour led a talk on sustainable fashion. Today, we're hosting one on sustainable tourism. I know tourism is maybe like a faux pas these days with the aspects of COVID and restrictions of travel, but it's very much part of the future solution. And there's a lot of challenges that we faced before COVID, a lot of challenges we're going to face after COVID. But I think one thing to kind of set the tone here is to acknowledge that by just having this call, by just being here, we are emitting carbon. We are all just emitting carbon beings, by how we travel, how we transit, how we eat, how we talk, the amount of energy and resources to host this event. We're carbon emitters, but that doesn't mean we can't live in harmony in community with the world. And so while I love all this topic and I could probably just blabber for an hour, I wanted to bring together people from around the world in different industries. So we have the quad helix represented here, which represents academia, government, business, and citizen. So there's some meddling between all those titles, but a really unique, eclectic group here that I'm extremely excited to tell you about. Without further ado, and me rambling too much more, we're all going to do a general intro and give a perspective from our lens of what sustainable tourism means. I have some curated Q&A that I'm going to use to go to the audience, but then I also want you to use the chat bar. Use it to communicate ideas, questions. I'm also going to put a few polls in there while it gets going. So without further ado, we're going to go around the horn here, and everyone's going to give a short little intro about themselves and a perspective of sustainable tourism from their lens. So Ivana, if you want to start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself and your perspective on sustainable tourism.
Brilliant. So hello, everyone. First of all, Kevin, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Hello, fellow panelists, and hello to everyone watching at home. My name is Ivana. I am a Serbo-Croatian from Bosnia, so I guess that really makes me a complete Yugoslavian. However, I've been living in Portugal for 10 years, where I currently work at the University of Aveiro as a researcher. So apart from doing a research on one project, I'm also conducting my own projects and doing a PhD. So hopefully I'm an almost PhD. Basically what sustainability means to me, it's very difficult not to give like a typical textbook answer, like because being in tourism area in the academia, like we always need to think about the sustainable aspects. But basically, so like when we say sustainable or sustainability, we think about the maintaining of the resources. We think about not creating a negative impact. And this impact, a lot of times people really only think environmentally or spatially, but it's also socially, culturally, and economically. So like this is kind of like a bigger picture. So whenever I think about sustainability, I think that that people not always think about all of the aspects of sustainability. And what sustainability represents for me in particular, it's like a way of being, it's like a way of living in all the aspects, including the travel, or at least it should be. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Ivana. And Marie, if you can go next.
Yes, hello everyone. Again, Kevin, thanks for having me. And a little bit about me. So I'm located on the west coast of the United States. I grew up kind of near Seattle for people who know the area, and that's where I live now, is north of Seattle. And I grew up being very active in the outdoors, and that really kind of shaped my childhood. So spending time in the mountains, going hiking or skiing. And that's kind of how I first got really tied to wanting to protect the environment from a young age. And it wasn't really until my like mid to late teens, I guess, that I got more involved in it. Kind of just realizing the impact that our individual actions can have on the planet. And then really realizing how much of a disconnect there was between what we talked about, sustainability and the outdoor industry, or even sustainability and tourism, which we're going to talk about today. So nowadays, I work as both a sustainability blogger and a freelance writer within really the outdoor industry predominantly, but also a little bit within tourism as well. And just trying to bridge that gap of how we can make these industries more sustainable, because both of them are really centered around experiencing the world and experiencing new places and nature, which should inherently be about sustainability if we want to make those resources last. So that's kind of what my work is focused on now. And to me, sustainable tourism really means just conscious and mindful tourism at its core. So, traveling in a way that is benefiting the planet and the ecosystems, but like we said, is also benefiting the local communities and the traditions that they have, and not exploiting them for one's own enjoyment, which is what a lot of mass tourism does. So for me, this really means a lot of like slow traveling and intentional traveling, not just doing the fastest mode of transportation or the quickest or the first excursion that we find, but really being mindful about the choices we're making and the impact that it's having on that community that we are in.
Well said. Conscious and mindful tourism. I like that. Uh,
Thanks.
Chaturika, if you want to go next.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kevin, for this opportunity as well. And I'm Chaturika Senaratna from Sri Lanka. I'm a lecturer in travel and tour management in the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. And as well as I'm a student of Master of Tourism Economics and Hotel Management. And currently I'm conducting research regarding the sustainable tourism based on my PGD. And as well as I'm a researcher related to ecotourism, as well as sustainable tourism, cultural tourism, like that. And as in my perspective, sustainable tourism is kind of a balance between environment, economic, and socio-cultural aspects of tourism development, as well as the cultural tourism. The sustainable tourism is caused to arise and kind of conserving the biodiversity, as well as minimize its impact of the environment and local culture, and as well as generate income, employment for the local community as well. These kind of advantages can be received from the sustainable tourism as well. Yeah. So that is the perspective regarding the sustainable tourism. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chaturika. And Aparna, if you could go next, please. And you're on mute, Aparna. Yeah, if you can go, you're on mute though. If you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's good evening from India. Thanks, Kevin, for this opportunity. I'm so thrilled, honestly, because I come from a very different background. And right now, I am an entrepreneur. I can't believe that what I'm doing right now is real. I'm a homemaker. I've done my post-graduation in business management. Um, in the year 2014, it was an accident and I landed up in travel and tourism industry. I started hosting people. I operated homestays in North Kerala. Over a span of 5 years, I've personally interacted with more than 3,000 travelers from various parts of the globe. I've had people come back from as far as California for second and third time to my homestay to spend their vacation. So I consider that as an achievement in my career in travel industry. In those days, I was just having a nice time, good work, a lot of money. It was fun. But I was also unconsciously, I must say, learning the impact of this industry on the planet because I had a lot of things to take care once the travelers left my homestays. So the leftovers were my indicators about the impact of travel industry on the planet. Right from childhood, I've been very close to nature. I'm a single child, which means I had a lot of time to be in the nature, talk to the trees around, animals at home. We had a farm. So and my connect with nature has been very deep. So suddenly this love for nature kicked in and I started thinking, what am I doing about uh, my work? And what is the contribution that I'm making as an entrepreneur to this planet? That's when in the year 2018, I founded this venture called Igloopupa, which is a web platform which suggests eco-friendly vacation rentals to travelers who visit India. So I focus on renters in India, in the first phase of my work. It was again very easy in the beginning, but when I'm doing a business, I had to offer some value for my customers, right? So I cannot just give a story saying that, okay, see, this is what it is. So it had to be measurable. So we started measuring sustainability. So probably that's my contribution to sustainable travel. Igloopupa is a platform where we verify and grade unique and environmentally friendly vacation rentals based on a sustainability index metrics, which is our proprietary method to find a value, a real number with which we can grade the rentals, where these days, especially vacation rentals are playing a major role in the economic and experience part of tourism. I believe I'm right when I say that. So that is the area where I work on. And so far it's been quite good. In the year 2018, this venture was selected as one of the top 100 business ideas in the country. And it was incubated at the Indian Institute of Management at Bangalore. And I was part of a women startup program. And the program was supported by Goldman Sachs Bank and the Ministry of Science and Technology.
Wow.
So I consider that as an beginning of a new way of work in my life.
Aparna, that's amazing. Congrats on all the success and excited to learn more. Kara, if you can go next, please.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Kara Folkerts. I'm originally from Canada, though I haven't really been living here for the last kind of 5 years, but I'm back now due to COVID. So I'm a world traveler advocating for sustainable and ethical travel. I'm an outdoor guide who's worked for several ecotourism and small adventure companies within the places I've traveled. And yeah, after finishing my university degree in ecotourism and outdoor, leadership. I've been traveling extensively, working at eco lodges abroad, teaching yoga, working different outdoor trips, and also just kind of exploring the world through my own human-powered adventures. And through all of that, I just really love sharing my passion of sustainable and ethical travel with other people. I write on a blog, and just connecting with other travelers as well. I think there's so much to get into when we think of environmentally conscious and just ethical travel. And I love speaking about it. So I'm happy to be here today with everyone. And yeah, what does sustainable travel mean to me? Three things that I really try and focus on is kind of the 3 Ps, which is people, planet, and profit, and thinking of that in a kind of health promoting way, and looking at the current situation we're in and also into the future. And I think one thing that I'm sure we'll touch on later as the conversation goes, that I think we always kind of miss is the education piece, and how we're educating ourselves as travelers, education in the local community, education of the environment, of economics, of everything. And that's continually fluctuating, but I think that's a really key aspect of how we can be more mindful travelers.
Thanks, Kara. It's all about mindful travel. It seems to be a common theme. And Tarran, if you could round us out with the intros and your perspective, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tarran Sims. I'm from the islands of the Bahamas. My journey in sustainable tourism started in undergrad. I studied small island sustainability with a focus in ecotourism and development. And I selected this for several reasons. One, I love people. I think we can learn so much from each other. I see tourism as a mechanism not only to help us with alleviating poverty, but also finding common grounds amongst each other, because it brings conversation. I went on to do a Master's of Science in Tourism and Hospitality Management in Madrid. And during that time, I was able to work with the Bolivian government in tourism development. And 2 years later, after graduating from that master's, I started doing climate change work. And it's so interesting, especially within developing countries, when we look at the impact of climate change on tourism products and development. You know, most developing countries rely heavily on tourism for GDP, for their contribution to GDPs. And when we look at the current threats of climate change being extreme weather events, and also the future threats of climate change being sea level rises, it poses an exponential threat on the tourism product and the attractiveness of these destinations. So I've dedicated my life work to finding adaptation measures, and also seeing how we can ensure that tourism is a means of conservation within small communities. Tourism is a means of profit in small communities, and tourism is a means of sharing cultures to bring a greater appreciation to one another throughout the world.
Tarran, so well said, and I appreciate all the perspective that we just had on all that. And frankly, I think looking into this tourism as a force for good. Granted, I want to talk about some of the problems with it, but especially as a tourism, how do we look at it as a force for good? And some examples of sustainable tourism done right, and examples of how it's benefiting the local community, encouraging global or local travel. And again, throughout all this, I want this to be organized pandemonium. Feel free to jump on top of each other and chime in, and trying to talk for longer than 2 minutes at any given time, 3 minutes max. But to start, some examples of best tourism in action and tourism best practices. Ivana and Tarran, if you could maybe kind of start off with that. But Ivana, if you want to give us some examples of best tourism in action from your perspective. And you're on mute. You're on mute. It's like the motto of 2020.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So yeah, I can speak from the perspective of Portugal mostly. Basically, in Portugal, there are a lot of green initiatives, which I think they're pretty amazing. So like a lot of not only like hotels and you know, like chain businesses, but also smaller businesses and like local accommodation. They're trying to implement these green practices like for example, like a mindful usage of the resources, collaboration with the local producers, like being careful with the usage of water, trying and manage the waste and the recycling in a more sustainable way. So for example, these are some practices that I know personally. I mean, I can also talk about some international examples that I know, but I think like Tarran is gonna jump in there. For example, I wanted to mention this amazing, like this amazing initiative of coral reef gardening. So like also connecting, for example, tourism with that, with these sort of initiatives. Like, yeah, basically trying to implement sustainability in the local way of traveling and being a part of the destination that the person visits. So yeah, like these are maybe some examples that I can give for now. I don't want to give like
Great.
some I don't want to give some like, you know, names of the businesses, but more or less like these are the practices that I've known from Portugal in particular.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about learning best practices here. So feel free to share anything in the chat as well. Tarran?
So some of the best practices, of course, I will speak from home. In the Bahamas, just to paint a picture, we are an archipelago. We have 700 islands, however, 16 islands that are developed with inhabitants. And on one particular island, for example, the island of Andros, there's a booming, what we call fly fishing market. And I started doing research in fly fishing about 5 years ago, just looking at the community-based tourism element of it. When we look at Andros, when we look at the Bahamas tourism model, you would ask a person, have you been to the Bahamas? And they would say, I've been to Atlantis. So Atlantis is here, Bahamas is here, and these anchor projects are destinations. But outside of the city where these big developments are, we have what we call our family islands. On some other archipelago, you would call them out islands. In these communities, you have these cultural products that are embraced by the international travel community. And fly fishing is one of them. Fly fishing is a sport done by most Americans and Europeans, and it's pretty much, it's a dancing way of fishing. So people come here to catch 3 types of species: bonefish, permit, and tarpon. And when you look at Andros fly fishing market, most of that sector is owned by Bahamians. So they have small lodges. They have guiding companies also. And also they're very strong on conservation. So when we look at people, planet, and profit, this is a great example of what we call the 3 pillars of sustainability. In Andros, this started to evolve in the 1980s when the community started to take a understanding to fly fishing. The Ministry of Tourism helped with training in fly fishing. And then also the Bahamas Development Bank came in and helped with the opening of small Bahamian-owned lodges. And Bahamians were able to get into the sector because when we look at ecotourism activities and ecotourism products, it takes low capital in startup to open up an eco lodge, a fly fishing lodge. And now the community we call it the bone fishing capital because most of the fly fishermen that come here, they come for bonefish, and we call it the bone fishing capital of the world. You have the biggest bones on our flats, on our mangrove flats. And so it's a great example of, again, as Kara said, people, planet, and profit. You have these local communities taking control of the local tourism product. They are not working in the product, but they're owning it. So therefore, they're steering the direction of the development of it. And most of these guides are, as I said, they're environmentally conscious. So they respect the environment that gives them their sustainable livelihood. So when we look at sustainability in the long run, these are the best people to have in the position as gatekeepers to be in control of the sector and ensure that it's preserved for future generations.
I love that. And from that, I heard the people, planet, profit a few times, and really how can you benefit the grassroots local community? How can we provide opportunities and empowerment for those on the local level? As I want to dive into that further, I mean, how can practicing sustainable tourism in action positively or negatively impact locals? And Chaturika, if you want to maybe shine some light onto that.
Yeah. When it comes to the practicing sustainable tourism positively affected the locals in the tourism destination, sustainable travelers normally spend in the destination often 1 or 2 weeks at a destination instead of just few days others do. As well as these kind of groups normally prefer to buy local products and support local community. They're especially looking for authenticity of the particular destination. As well as these particular groups normally just love to see a farm where vegetables are produced as well as the animals are growing, and these things really need to enhance the incomes of local community. As well as these sustainable practices is always affect to create more and more job opportunities for the local community, and this is very much kind of benefits for especially for the locals in the particular area. As well as when it comes to homestay, a lot of locals, they can earn more and more money, as well as they can share their experiences with the tourist, and this also would help to get a lot of benefits from the sustainable tourism. So yeah, these are the things that I just have to say regarding this.
Great. Kara or Marie, if you guys have any comments on ways that how practicing sustainable tourism can positively or negatively impact some of the local communities.
Yeah, definitely. I can jump in. I think it's awesome to have local-based community because it's really a way, like they were saying, like everyone was saying previously, to empower the locals in managing all of it themselves and making jobs for them and keeping the money local. And I think it's just such a powerful way to do that. And also, I think within that, you're having more cross-cultural understanding and just having them be the ones, the locals to be the ones to make the decisions. But I also feel like they have to be, that's where I feel like the education piece comes in, because I think it's really easy to see money coming in and kind of continue. And I feel like that's what we've seen in trends of tourism for so long. And then all of a sudden you have mass tourism where hundreds of thousands of people are coming and they don't have the infrastructure. So I think within that, if the local economies are running the show, it's great for empowerment, it's great for jobs, but again, there needs to be that level of understanding to do it in a mindful and health promoting way. So whether that means kind of capping it off to an amount that they have like the carrying capacity for, that still helps the economy thrive, but isn't kind of going over that tipping edge of what is sustainable and what will kind of dovetail into mass tourism. And then that's where I think you also see very commonly where then local communities that have these traditions and heritage and everything that people want to see for the cultural understanding start to become exploited for money. And that's a whole other thing I'm sure we'll get into as well. But then, yeah, they lose so much in that too. So I think the education of how to properly manage it. And that's, again, something when local communities can understand that, that's, again, a sense of empowerment for the tourism there.
Totally. Marie, if you want to go, and then Tarran, if you can add on to that.
Yeah, kind of very similar to what Kara said. Yeah, having like the infrastructure that if they are getting more tourists, that they're able to withstand it. Because oftentimes maybe they're able to handle a smaller load, but if mass tourism comes in, then usually a lot of foreigners will come in. And as we were saying, like things like Atlantis down in the island of the Bahamas, like I would assume that that is not owned and run by any local communities. But it really only makes sense that if a local community is experiencing tourism, that they should be the ones benefiting financially from that, not some large company that just happens to own or run things. So what Kara is saying, empowering and helping educate them, and a lot of really kind of eco-friendly or sustainable tourist destinations often get to work with their own governments in a way that they are able to have that infrastructure kind of embedded into their tourism, so that if they do get more tourists, they have the capacity, or they know how to handle it, or they know that they have a certain limit that they don't want to go over, as to not, like Kara was saying, exploit their resources and their culture.
Well said. And Tarran, I know you had your hand up and wanted to say something there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what both Kara and Marie were saying. Kara said something really important about keeping the money within the community, and Marie spoke about mass tourism, ecotourism transitioning into mass tourism. And when we empower local communities to own um, the niche markets that they have in their areas, one, when we look at market studies, it shows that people are willing to pay more for ecotourism products compared to mass tourism products. So for example, again, I go to fly fishing. We did a market research and we found out that fly fishing accounts for 4% of the overall arrivals to the Bahamas, but accounts for 12% of the overall expenditure. So therefore, these people have a higher buying capacity over mass tourism guests, like cruise ship guests, and those coming to the big luxury resorts. These people they're looking for niche products, and they're willing to pay the money for niche products to help protect those areas. And in these areas that are owned by the local community, it prevents leakages in the economic system, and most of that money stays within the local community.
Well said. And there's so many questions coming in. I love seeing all this. And Aparna, from the kind of a business perspective, and there's been a lot of talk in the chat about Airbnb and can it be a fair B&B concept? I look at your business as being somewhat of a hybrid of working with local businesses and tapping into local resources, the local labor. But how can businesses be a force for good within this aspects of sustainable tourism? I mean, Tarran mentioned the aspects of the fly fishing, and there is low cost of capital to build something of value. But from your perspective, how can businesses sort of be part of the solution to give back and give in? And Aparna, if you could start with that, and then everyone else feel free to give your perspective on how businesses can play a role.
Like I mentioned in my intro, I began with mass tourism. So what helped me run my business was basically the feedback from my customers. That means travelers. So as far as sustainable tourism is concerned, be it the accommodation part or be it the community development part, the word of mouth has to be focused on sustainability. That has to become the trend. So when you look at sustainability, I still feel that it is a niche that we are talking about. If we are looking at impact on the planet, it has to be mass. It has to be something which every common man can practice. It shouldn't be a niche if you're looking at a real time impact. So coming back to the question, I hope my answer will be a direct one. The reviews that we focus on right now in the industry is only about the luxury part or the conveniences in the comforts one can enjoy when the person is going to a destination or a vacation rental, be it a resort or whatever it is. We have to take initiative and create more awareness that destinations and services get promoted based on the benefit that they have on people and planet. That's my answer to this question.
A great answer. Anyone else have any other thoughts in terms of how business plays a role? Ivana?
Yeah, well, I would just like to add on to this that like not just the education and the creating awareness, but it's very important to create partnerships. And a lot of times, especially I noticed that here in Portugal, there's us and there's them. There's like, the big business owners and then the small and medium business owners, but like they should work together. Also the academia and the industry should collaborate, because I think that if, like there's not them and us, if it's like all of us together, then we can create a greater impact, and then the governments can, again, together with us, build a better future and better, not just traveling conditions, but like generally sustainable life, sustainable living, because everything begins from that, from the way the person lives. That's how also person behaves when they travel. So I think it's like a vicious cycle. So it all really comes together.
I love that. And I think one thing I've seen in the chat here as well is maybe some of these are sort of macro topics and things that we're talking about and how businesses are involved and how government policies play a role. But what what are some things from how businesses can get involved or how us individuals can do to be more eco-centric in our travels in terms of slow traveling, be more mindful when we're traveling, in terms of whether we need top level partnerships. So those are the questions for everyone, but I think maybe Marie, if you want to start us off with any ideas you have on things that travelers can do or anyone within the realm of tourism to do to play a role here to move us all forward towards more sustainable tourism.
Yeah, I think just kind of like an overarching thing that people can do for every aspect of their travel is, like we said, being mindful. And that really looks like taking your time before you're traveling and like doing some research, not just booking the exact first or the fastest way to get from point A to point B, or the first hotel you see, or the first this, which, is sadly how a lot of people do it, just because it's quick and it's easy. But taking time before we're actually going to travel to really do our research and figure out, okay, yes, it might cost a little more to travel on this train, but I get to stop in these local communities along the way. Or, what are really important, activities for this community that I'm visiting, and how can I ensure that the ones that I am actually going to, that I'm wanting to experience, are actually supporting the local communities. And I saw in the chat some people talking about how it has become kind of a buzzword and almost a greenwashing of sorts to use the word ecotourism, which unfortunately there are companies that are probably going to use that terminology but not actually get back to it. So really just looking at those companies, whether their websites or their reviews, and not being afraid to reach out to them and say, okay, how is your business giving back to the local community? And, holding them accountable for any claims that they are making. I would say it's just kind of a start, but I'll let other people pitch into that too.
Love it. Around the horn here. What other thoughts we got?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Maria was saying. And I think the biggest thing when I think of this question, like what can we do to be more eco-friendly travelers, is like, yeah, like use a reusable water bottle, fly less, slow travel, and all these things. But my biggest thing is, first and foremost, we need to ask why. Like we need to create that mindset shift in ourselves of why are we traveling? Why do we want to see a place? What is the importance of doing it in this ethical way? And once we create that mindset shift in ourselves of why it's important to travel ethically and sustainably, then I think that kind of starts the ball rolling to start making more responsible and ethical decisions as we're on the road, of why it's important to try staying at homestays, why it's important to take the time to look at eco certifications, and just understanding that like sometimes it's going to take a little more. You're going to have to pay a little more. You're going to have to do more work and research. But when you start to have that mindset shift of why it's important in your life and for the planet and for the people, then I think it just starts this whole domino effect of making more conscious choices. And I think one thing I know for myself, and I'm sure for a lot of you too, it's really easy when we are on the road to beat ourselves up if you say, go to this eco lodge, and then you find out that they are doing greenwashing, or you're trying to go on as few as flights, but you're still flying a little bit. And I think once you know better, you do better. But at the same time, there are times where we just need to give ourselves grace because we are trying. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is the mindset shift, and just trying to continually do better and try and do our best with what we have.
Totally agree. No matter what, we're going to be emitting some level of carbon and making some impact, but it's being mindful and also finding ways to maybe offset some of those actions with anything we do. And I know offsetting is maybe another greenwashing term, but no matter what, we're going to have some impact. So how do we make it more in unison? But I like this conversation here. So Chaturika or Ivana or Tarran, other thoughts on things that us as individual travelers or things that businesses or government can do to make sustainable tourism more part of our DNA?
You can go ahead. You can go.
So basically, I think we should just, take the baby steps and just, like one step at a time, small actions, small things. Like, for example, like if you need to use a Bolt or Uber, any of those companies, use the eco one, use the electric one. If you need to buy fruits, go to the local fruit store. If you want a present, go to the local souvenir shop. Don't go to the, like the, I feel bad to say, but like these big Chinese stores that everything is kind of like unauthentic and just like multiplied without any, like without any really meaning and any connection to the place. So yeah, like basically just like these really small actions that we can each really take, and then it just turns into a habit. And then we just, like do it unconsciously. And as I said before, also like practice these little things even in our everyday life, like turn off the lights, use less water, like just these small actions that I think just start being incorporated in our mindset. And then we just, start behaving the same way while we travel. And then, yeah, like by talking to people, discussing these issues, as also Kara mentioned, it's also very important to, create this awareness and, debate it, like let people know why is it important, why does it, these domino effect that she mentioned, like how like the small actions can create, bigger impacts and bigger changes. So I think it's all about that.
Totally agree. Those small actions really domino into larger impact.
Yeah.
Tarran?
So just as Ivana was saying, it starts with, I think, consumers, we drive the market. People only, when we look at markets, what's provided in the market is what's demanding of the market. And so I think we definitely have to change our consumer behavior. Again, it starts from home. Sustainability is more behavioral change. We have, as Ivana was saying, small things, water conservation, simple as turning off the light. And, we have a lot of hotels now that are actually putting out small signs. It not only helps them to help the environment, but also helps their sustainable bottom line. Because in most developing countries, electricity is really expensive. I can give an example of myself. Whilst I was backpacking through South America, Peru, and Bolivia, I spoke to locals about where to go, the best places to eat, the best places to buy local goods. And so and as Marie said, I traveled very slowly. So I spent 2 weeks in an area to get to know that area, to get an idea of where I should go next and where my dollar would best support the local communities. For example, the Machu Picchu tour, everybody books online. I went into Cusco and I walked around and I looked for a local guide because I wanted to go with somebody who was local, who was not commercially local, but local, who would give me an experience that was worthwhile. I wanted an authentically crafted experience. And when you travel slow, this is what you get. You can pay for those kind of experiences that you get from authentically local tourism products. So it not only helps the business, but it also helps you to get a meaningful experience from your travel.
Well said. Can agree more. And Chaturika or Aparna, anything on individual action?
Yeah, as a eco-friendly tourist, they people just need to select airlines which is member of International Air Transport Association. Why it is said like that? This particular association always offer carbon offset programs to neutralize the aircraft carbon emissions by investing in carbon reduction products. So as a tourist, they people just select the airlines which is membered under this kind of association, as well as the eco tourists, they just need to pack their luggages in very light way, because why? Heavy luggages will require a huge amount of more fuel, and it is negatively affected for the environment. So that is what as a eco tourist they can practice, as well as the eco tourist they just need to select more eco-friendly accommodation which are practicing green practices such as solar power, rainwater harvesting, efficient lighting, and low flow toilets. standards. Like as a ecotourist, these kind of things need to be well concerned while they are selecting more eco-friendly accommodation in their traveling, as well as they just should have an idea what kind of activities that they just engage in the particular destination that they are traveling, especially if the particular destination offer elephant rides. It's not good to engage such activities as a eco-tourist in worldwide. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Well, a lot of good thoughts and insights on that. And frankly, there's so many other directions that we can take the conversation here. But I think one that I've heard quite a bit is the aspect of community-based tourism, with how to work with locals, the local resources, local labor. There's a lot in that, from how do we protect the life on land, life under the water, how do we provide low sustainable jobs, as well as making sure we're not just completely degrading the community. And I think Atlantis is maybe sort of an example of maybe how not to do that. Maybe Tarran, you could speak more to that. But then there's some great examples, and Aparna, you're living, breathing proof of it, of really good, sustainable, community-based tourism. So just along this note, get some riffing here. Anyone thoughts on sort of what's the perspective of it? What are some examples of it? And how do we make community-based travel and tourism something that is ingrained in all 194 countries in the world?
I'd like to answer this question with a very small example. A practice that I have tried incorporating in one of the rentals that I operate. I hope you can see this. It's a piece of fabric. I'm just using the torch of my mobile phone to just show how transparent it is. Okay. It's a hand woven fabric. It's a bath towel. So it has been one of my areas of interest, that is handloom. So I've tried doing my bit. We use hand woven bath towels and gift it to our guests who come to the rental. I'm talking about an inventory size of just 2 bedrooms, which means in a month, if we have a 50% occupancy, we'll be selling 30 bath towels, supporting a small weavers community. So as a host, I'm being responsible. So like I think Ivana mentioned about how we need to start developing habits back home and start practicing them when we travel also. We say that charity begins at home. Sustainability has to begin from home. So these kind of practices, when the host starts taking off, and like how Chaturika mentioned, when the leader in the industry, when an aviation company is taking a major step forward, I think people will follow. I go back to my earlier comment. Sustainability has to become a trend. It has to become a style statement, and it has to be practical also. I've always wondered why people use the heavy bath towels, and I'm a little finicky about hygiene also. So even if it is going into a power laundry, I'm not very happy using a bath towel which somebody else has been using. COVID has all put things in place, according to me. So now we are scared of even touching something, even if it has been sanitized. So these are, I'd like to take this opportunity and make a few corrections from my end. If everybody is willing to look around and practice what is being practiced locally in their own region, sustainability will obviously be the result, is what I believe. Yeah.
Fantastic. Others, Marie, Kara, Tarran, any thoughts on that?
On community-based tourism, I get jitters when I talk about it. I am completely in love with community-based tourism. I always say that in the Caribbean region, we sold sun, sand, and sea, but now they're building it in Japan and indoors, so you can get sun, sand, and sea anywhere. But what makes us different and unique is our people. And our people are our communities. When we look at places like Jamaica, and then we look at St. Vincent and the Grenadine with the Garifuna, we look at Belize, these areas have individual communities that are so different. And in the Bahamas, we have the same thing. We're starting to embrace it. We're developing this community-based tourism project right now. In the Bahamas with Compete Caribbean and the Inter-American Development Bank. And this comes after years of research in the Caribbean. So there was research done on the American market, and it found out that Americans were willing to pay more for farm-to-table experiences within local communities, more for locally ran tours, more for locally ran programs, art and heritage. And we have that within our region, well, throughout the world. We have the people want to buy culture because people want something different. They're not traveling to go outside of their environment and experience the same environment. Like, for example, I always tell people, I'm like, an American is not, well, some Americans do, but most people don't. Like, if I have McDonald's in my community, I don't want to travel and eat a Big Mac. I want to travel and eat something that's locally made and authentic. Not only do I want to travel and eat this thing, I want to be a part of the experience. People no longer want to come somewhere and experience something. They want to be a part of creating that experience with the local community in a way that does not disrespect the local culture, but in a way to say, I appreciate the local culture, I recognize the local culture, I understand the good that I'm doing within this local community. And so with the project, it's coupling community-based tourism and cluster development. So that covers several of the SDGs. We have SDG 12 when we look at responsible consumption. And so with the cluster concept, how do we work with local communities and the different elements that create the entire tourism sector and link them together to get a greater market share? These communities are very small. So for a small eco-lodge to go there and market by themselves, it takes more dollars for them to do it, which they don't, that they can save if we work together as a community cluster. So how do we bring clustering and community-based tourism together for these local communities to get a greater market share in the international travel community and give people an experience that they want and that they are demanding?
Yeah, that's
Also,
awesome, Tarran.
Kara?
Sorry.
Kara, go, please.
Yeah, no, and I think exactly what you're saying too is having it be community-based. No one knows an area better than the locals. You can't come in from a third country or anything and expect to put this resort or anything like that and probably charge more and give that authentic experience if you've never been brought up in it. So if you really want that true, like as a traveler, if we really want these true cross-cultural understanding and cultural immersions, we need to have it by the people who know it best, the traditions, the heritage that have been passed down for years and years and years. And I think when it's community-based tourism and the communities are the ones having ownership of it, they're able to manage it as well and manage the impacts and the benefits of the tourism and strengthen the self-governments within that region as well, and the economic alternatives so that the locals are keeping the money there. And it's just them to show their traditional ways of life too. So I think community-based tourism is like the hub of it all. And I know there was a question in the chat too, talking about if these community and just like ecotourism in general, because it's so much more expensive than mass tourism, if that will maybe, as the trend rises in sustainable tourism, if that will potentially level off in pricing so it can be more affordable. But I think one thing we need to realize as travelers, the reason it is sustainable and ethical is the people are getting paid what they should be getting paid for their service. I think so much of mass tourism is cheap and quick and easy, and you see all these people being exploited and working longer hours and not getting paid what they should. And I guess this is a bit of a different conversation too, but I think a big part of community-based tourism too is making sure that the locals are being paid their fair share of the work they're putting in. So I don't know if we'll see ecotourism trends and all of that potentially going down in price, because then I think that could be greenwashing too. I think they should be higher because I think the wages of the workers should be high as well.
One question I want to put in here and have everyone riff on, you just talked about mass tourism and gave some good insight there in aspects of community-based tourism, but I hear a lot of terms with sustainability. Is sustainability a privilege? Is sustainable traveling a privilege? And I know there's a lot in that question, but I'd love for us to go around the horn, rip at each other's throats, but also respectfully, kind of your perspective on that. And Marie and Tarran, I know you had your hands up, and then we can go to Chaturika and Ivana and everyone, and after that.
Yeah, well, my personal opinion, I definitely think that sustainability is a privilege. It's sad that it is that way. And I think kind of what Kara was saying, I don't think the goal should necessarily be to drop the prices of ecotourism or maybe sustainable items, but be able to make it more accessible. So figuring out ways that it can empower lots of people, but not at the cost of, like we we're saying, the way mass tourism does, not paying people the fair wages they deserve. Because if ecotourism becomes so cheap, then there really isn't much that makes it different from mass tourism. And that's kind of how unfortunately, some communities have, not had the infrastructure and they need to make it cheaper. And then it just leads into mass tourism, even if their intentions were really good for uplifting their local community. So I think, yes, sustainability is a privilege and so is ecotourism. So finding ways that we can make it more accessible and, ways that, yeah, more people can experience it without taking advantage of those local communities.
Thanks. Well said. Chaturika, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can explain the mass tourism is like it's a kind of a prominent parts of the tourism industry, as well as the mass tourism always associated with the traditional package holiday, well-known holiday resorts, as well as famous tourist attraction. A lot of tourists gather in the similar destination, and it is normally negatively affected for the environment as well as the local community as well. So the environmental pollution and littering, erosion, damage to flora and fauna, and all the things can be happen because of the mass tourism, as well as this particular concept can be negatively affected for the local social aspects as well. So in that case, increases the crimes and loss of cultural and authenticity can be negatively affected for the society, even in the society, because of the mass tourism. Yeah, it's not just like the sustainable tourism, and yeah, that is on that.
Yeah, and just for everyone to know, we're approaching the hour, but we're gonna go a little bit after, so it's not gonna end. We'll probably end it 10, 15 minutes late. This is like a freight train that I don't want to stop, so we're in the middle of it. So Ivana, if you want to give your perspective on that.
Yeah, I just want to add that I think it's very important how we think is how what our mindset is as consumers. So basically, if we buy less, if we consume less, then we're able to buy these meaningful and these authentic products. So, for example, I know that a lot of people, do purchases just because something is cheap. But if we buy less things, also like things that we don't need, and like just okay, give a little bit of more of money for the people who actually deserve it, for the people who really put effort into it, like also what Marie and Cara mentioned. I think then if we just change our mindset, it becomes acceptable and we consume less, but okay, we give the people and we pay for the products as much as they're actually worth. So I think that's important. And okay, now I had another thought, but it went away. So if someone wants to jump in.
Please, Tarran, Kara, Aparna, any thoughts?
I think I can give a perspective of my own family. So when we travel, we have children. So the requirements, the elements in our travel are a multitude of things. So we can't stop. Very recently, I would say, like last weekend, we were off to the nearby hill station. And in spite of all my lecture about sustainability, I was surprised about the number of plastic packets in which even the snacks were available. I'm not talking about junk food, not the mass produced. Even the locally made food was available in plastic bags. So there is a lot of distance between the fact, the reality, and what we are talking about. So I again repeat, there has to be a lot of awareness, and it has to be a collaborative effort, especially due to this pandemic. I think it's high time we collaborate more than competition between companies or even between individuals. There has to be a lot of joint effort that is to come into this industry and any other industry for that matter. And I'd like to also bring in this point, which I learned with a lot of difficulty. I have a problem with numbers. I'm not that great with math, but due to a lot of business pitches and all that, I had to learn this fact that travel and tourism is the second largest industry in the world, contributing to 10% of global GDP. I hope I'm right. So look at the potential of this industry to improve the planet. And we cannot blame mass tourism either. Everybody would like to travel. Everyone wants to have fun. And with my bit of research, I understand that it was post-industrial revolution that people actually started affording leisure travel. Till then, it was either for a pilgrimage or for trade reasons that people traveled from point A to B. But leisure travel kicked off after industrial revolution, which means people had a lot of money and they had to spend it in some way or the other, probably just to be happy. So it's a basic right. You cannot stop. You cannot tell somebody that you shouldn't do this. Too many do's and don'ts actually spoils the fun. But what if the market is so well tuned that whatever is available is only sustainable or is only an environmentally friendly product? What if tomorrow that we are talking about is such that your market is flooded with locally made products? I think that is where we should focus. And there has to be some regulation also. Governments have to play their role, which, when you look at who the government is, it's nobody else but people. So people can make the difference, is what I believe.
Well said. Tarran, and then Kara, if you want to give some insights.
Yeah, so I'm going to approach it from two different angles when it comes to accessibility to sustainable tourism products. One, I think that in local areas, we should prioritize the locals in those areas. So for example, ensure that fee structures are not set up for them to access the natural products that people are coming to experience. Because in some areas, for example, they'll have a hot spring, and it will be dominated by tourists, but locals don't have accessibility because maybe they can't pay to go into the hot spring. But it's their local environment, so there should not be a fee structure applied to the entrance. It should be free of cost. I look at sustainable tourism products. Yes, we have created it into a privilege. When we look at, eco camps in Africa, in the Serengeti, when we look at luxury eco camps in South America. But I think this is what the market has turned it into, and the privilege have turned it into. They've turned it into this exclusive, we're done with mass tourism. We want to be exclusive. We want to have our luxury eco camps. But ecotourism and sustainable tourism is as simple as getting a tent and paying a local person to set up a tent for you in a national park. It's as simple as going fishing on a dock with somebody in a local community. So it doesn't have to be expensive. I think as consumers, we need to be able to go into local communities, find a local guide, and pay them the right prices, but whilst ensuring that we're not making it an exclusive club. So for example, I didn't have a lot of money when I went to Peru at all. I was a student. I had zero money. But when I went there, I did my research very thoroughly. I looked for the right people, and I paid. If the tour was $300, I paid $300, knowing that that guy was from the local community that was going to him and his family. So I think you have to do your research. You have to change your perspective on what exactly you consider sustainable tourism. It's not going to the Serengeti and going into a luxury camp that's not owned by a local. It's going to a local guy who can take you around and who probably even have a homestay. So I think we have to change our perspective on what exactly is sustainable tourism, what are sustainable tourism products. And yeah, the environment was not meant to be expensive and not accessible, but rather respected and enjoyed in a sustainable manner.
Well said. And Kara, to finish off some of those thoughts.
I'm so glad you said all of that, because that is exactly it. I think we've created ecotourism to be, luxury hotels and these $1,000 eco retreats and everything like that. And that at the core of it is not what sustainability or sustainable travel started as. And I think when talking of privilege, we do still need to understand like the privilege of being able-bodied, of having the time allowance, of having still some money, some sense of disposable income that you are still paying for travel. But it doesn't need to be these $1,000 eco retreats and stuff. You can still be staying in small homestays. And I think it just is trying to educate ourselves on how we can travel sustainably without it needing to be this huge luxury resort. And again, understanding the privilege with time and able body and everything. So yeah, I think there's kind of a divide in that, but definitely I think at the core of it, sustainable tourism can just be like, I know that even in the chat, I think James said too, just putting a tent in the back of your car and going to a park or camping out there too. It's like, it doesn't need to be these grand adventures. It can also just be these little micro adventures and taking that into account as well. So.
Well said. And Aparna, I saw you have your hand raised if you wanted to add something else there.
Yeah, my question is to Kara and Tarran. See, when you talk about these micro adventures and all the fun, what is your view or your comments on the level of awareness that you expect from society? Now, I speak from a place which is very popular among travelers. It's quite visible on the world map of tourism, that's Kerala. If you look at the larger picture, even India is one of the top destinations in the entire globe. But the level of awareness among the locals, from my perspective, it's not that great. Unless your locality is that touristy, not everybody welcomes a random visitor on the street. So how would you, what your comments on that, please? Any one of the panel.
Yeah, I love that question. And I guess even to say that is just the privilege of having then being in an area where people can just pitch up a tent or something. So that's a huge thing to take into account as well. So thank you for that. And I think a huge thing then, again, as us as travelers, is if we go places where maybe it isn't the norm of what we're used to, it's again, educating ourselves on the customs of the cultural norms and what's appropriate for that region. So say for me to go into Kerala and just pitch up a tent, if that's not welcome, then that's not me being an ethical traveler as well. So it is taking all that into consideration. So that's a really good point. Yeah, thank you.
To add to that, that's a great point. I was going to mention earlier, like, with community-based tourism, I think the first step for community-based tourism is talking with the community and asking them, do you want tourism? Because, a lot of communities aren't, as you said, they don't want to welcome people within their local community, and we can't force that. And then you have some examples of, tourism being forced in areas. Like let's look at an example of Barcelona. In Barcelona, they had whole revolutions against tourism. There was, tourists go away because they were crowding the area. So we have to be very careful, and that comes from several different levels. The local level, you have to understand the local community's perception of tourism and their want for tourism. And then at the governmental level, how do we set up policies to protect local communities who do not want to welcome big tourism developments, whether it be big or small? And so how do we create these frameworks to ensure that we protect local communities in order to protect local cultures? So we definitely have to drive it from the grassroots level and then bring it up.
Love that. Any other thought? That was a great question, Aparna. If Marie or Ivana, or Chaturika, any responses on how Aparna's question?
Yeah, well, this is basically the main topic that my research group is researching, especially prior to COVID. So like basically we've had over tourism before this current under tourism that's happening due to COVID. So yeah, like this fantastic example that Tarran said of Barcelona, but there are like so many more. Barcelona is just the one that's been happening recently. But what about Venice? What about Rome? What about the destinations that they have had this phenomenon even before the term over tourism was coined? also like in Lisbon, even in Portuguese context, we have it in Lisbon. So therefore I just wanted to make a comment on this, you know, amazingness of community-based tourism, because also if it's exaggerated, if everyone wants, you know, like to live locally, to mingle with the, you know, with the locals, use the local transportation, that it really disrupts the everyday life of, you know, like local communities. So I think that's also like something to really, you know, pay attention to. And unfortunately, it's only something that the governments can resolve. You know, like it's lovely to be a part of local community and to try and live locally even while we travel, but a lot of times it can cause problems. It can cause this hostility, you know, like from the locals that, you know, just don't want any more tourism. So I think everything is about, you know, like sustainable management and planning and long term. It has to be long term, because, you know, like these short term mindsets just don't work. And not only in urban context, but also in natural contexts. Like I've been reading a lot about it, and, you know, like doing research on the topic. And for example, Maya Bay in Thailand, Boracay Beach in the Philippines, even Yellowstone in the USA. So, you know, like we really need to kind of like tackle this balance, you know, between what's acceptable and what's not.
Love that. So to that question that Aparna just asked, I believe the only other two people, Chaturika and Marie, if you wanted to give quick snippets on that, then I want to give final thoughts, and then we got to wrap it up here.
Yeah, kind of touching what everyone else touched on. I think just because someone has the privilege to travel to a certain place doesn't necessarily mean that we should. So I'm privileged enough that I could travel almost anywhere in the world, but that doesn't mean that I should, because we have to take into account whether or not those communities want or can support tourism. And like we were all saying, I think at a government level, I think when you look at some of the most sustainable or eco-friendly destinations like Japan or Malta or the Netherlands or Costa Rica, a lot of them have things in place by the government to ensure that it is going to be more sustainable. So whether that is policies of having tourists take a pledge that they're going to act in a certain way or respect the local communities, or having just a really in-depth network of information that tourists can turn to, so they know, you know, go visit these communities that are centered around tourism, rather than over flooding the communities that don't have it. And just having things in place at the government level, but also knowing that in a lot of communities, like you were saying, in Yellowstone or national parks here, can be super overrun. But knowing that as citizens, if we are from this place, that I have the power to vote and elect officials that are going to do their part at the government level to protect those lands. So it does start at the government, but also knowing that as citizens, we have the power to hopefully make a change on the government level.
Well said and well put. Chaturika, some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I think sustainable tourism is one of the best practices we can practice as a sustainable traveler even in the world, as well as sustainable tourism means meets the needs of present tourists. Meets the needs of present tourists mean every time as a host, as the particular people in the particular destination, every time we need to focus on the tourist satisfaction as well as the expectation. And host region's expectation mean every time the people just try to get income as well as job opportunities to the tourism sector, as well as in this case, while meet the needs of the present tourist and host region, we always try to protect the resources on behalf of the future generation. That is the main thing related to the sustainable tourism, as well as using resources sustainability, reducing overconsumption and wastage, maintaining the biodiversity, integrating tourism into planning, supporting local economics. These all the things need to be well fulfilled to the sustainable tourism. Yes.
Well said. And we're 13 minutes past the hour, but I want to give everyone one last final mic drop of kind of a moment of fire. And Kara, I know you do have a time crunch, so we'll start with you, and everyone just give kind of a final 60-second final thoughts, concerns, ideas, a challenge for the audience, whatever it may be, and Kara, if you could start us off, please.
Awesome. Yeah, I do need to head out pretty quick. So I will be jumping off after this. But I just want to thank everyone here. And I think my final thought is we need to keep having these conversations. I think so much of these are issues that are not just going to have a quick, clear answer to them. And it's just continuing to follow the current trends in tourism and the future trends, and just thinking of, again, the 3 Ps: people, planet, profit in mind, and how we can do that in a very health and sustaining way. And I think the biggest thing is just having these conversations, talking to people, being inquisitive travelers, looking to the governments, researching, and all of this. And I think that's the biggest thing, is we just have to keep on that. So yeah, thank you, everyone. I do need to head out right away. I'm off to work. It's early here in Canada, but yeah, thanks for joining, guys, and hope to be in touch soon.
Bye, Kara. Until next time.
Thanks.
All right, Ivana, if you could give us some of your final thoughts in a moment of fire.
Okay, so basically, we didn't really talk a lot about COVID and about the current state of things. So I'd just maybe like to reflect a little bit on that. So world economy in general is in a huge predicament, and so is tourism. So I think like a lot of the future planning also needs to kind of think about how things were pre-COVID and during COVID, so that, you know, like we don't find ourselves in this situation again. So yeah, I just like to emphasize the importance of, you know, like volunteering tourism, ecotourism, sustainable tourism, just, you know, like this sustainable mindset. And that should be the future. And, you know, not just in the future of traveling, but the future of living generally, and tourism just, tourism just being a part of it.
Thanks. Well said. Aparna, if you could go next, please.
Yeah, I'd like to wrap up saying that it's people who can make difference wherever it is, not just tourism. So learning has to happen from various aspects. And I believe that travel is wonderful, and it has the potential to bring us back from the disastrous phase that we are going through. And like what Ivana was telling, we need to really think serious about what is this post-COVID situation is going to be. And I repeat, tourism has the potential to help us recover emotionally and economically. It is high time sustainable tourism becomes the mainstream tourism. So I look at the future in that way. Thank you very much for having me here.
Well said. Well put. Chaturika, your final thoughts?
Yeah, as I think sustainable tourism is kind of a sustainable balance between the environment, economic, and social cultural aspects of tourism development. As a tourist, they just love to travel, as well as in this sustainable tourism manner. As the tourists, they also should think about the host community, as well as their income, job opportunities like that. As well as the tourists, they just think while having their expectation and their satisfaction, obviously they just need to respect the local cultures and authenticity as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Well said. And Marie?
Yeah, I think kind of what we're all talking about, we didn't really touch on COVID that much. And obviously, tourism or travel right now is limited or non-existent for most of us. So I think it's important to remember that sustainability and ecotourism and all of these aspects that we talked about, they start at home. And we talked about how the way that we travel is often the way that we live our daily lives. So remembering to take this time of not traveling and kind of reflect on how we're going about our days, and you know, what are sustainable things that we can do at home or in our own community. And that way, when traveling does happen again, or whether it's local or international, that we go about it in that way and it becomes a bit easier, maybe a bit more natural for all of us.
Thanks so much. And Tarran, if you want to round us off here, please.
Yeah, I think that tourism, when we look at the current situation that we're in, global travel market has completely come to a halt. But I think this is an opportunity for both travelers and destinations to start to reflect on not only their tourism products and also their tourism product selection from a consumer standpoint. For developing countries, I speak on behalf from a Bahamas and Caribbean perspective. This is time for us to reorganize our tourism product, to develop a product that is focused on our people, that is focused on our environment, and that is focused on increasing the socioeconomic statuses of local communities. I think this is a time for us to start to invest more into locals becoming owners within the tourism sector in different niche markets. And this can be done through education and empowering, and also holding workshops to show people the endless possibilities of what you can do within tourism. When we look after 9/11, we thought that travel was completely decimated. During the 2008 recession. But when we look at the numbers, travel increased exponentially after these global stresses. So I have no ifs, ands, or buts if tourism will rebound. It will rebound. And I think on the rebound in developing countries, we need to ensure that when we open back up, tourism is focused on our people, again, our planet, and ensuring that local communities are benefiting from this. Tourism is a way for us to bring, as I said, world peace, appreciation. People want to learn about each other, and this can be done through travel. It's a phenomenal thing. And thank you for having me on this panel.
Thank you so much. And I think if I learned anything here is that this is not an easy one-size-fits-all solution. There's 194 countries, and within all those countries, there's so many different local dynamics. But I think the community-based tourism and the focus on people, planet, profit, and all these comments were just blowing me away from Maria, Ivana, Chaturika, Tarran, Aparna, and Kara, who's left. Thank you so much. We didn't talk about COVID impact as much as maybe we should have. It just started going off in that direction, but I'm really proud and excited about the conversation we had. If anything, we need to have another one, and we're going to have some coming up every month, maybe multiple ones. So, but next month, look for sustainable finance. And I just want to thank you all for joining. If you got any questions, reach out to us at sdgtalkspodcast.com or sdgtalkspodcast@gmail.com for an email. And again, thank you guys all so much for joining us here. Hopefully we'll be able to start traveling slower and locally and sustainable international travel and explore all this moving forward. But thank you all. Stay safe, and much love to everyone.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Till next time. Peace.